You're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name, and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest John Lesch, a name you might remember from the year 2006. He ran in the 14th Congressional District. He was running as the Democrat against then Speaker J. Dennis Hastert, and perhaps gave him a scare, 60-40%. That is 60% for the Speaker, the then Speaker J. Dennis Hastert, 40% for John Lesch. And prior to that point, I don't think Dennis Hastert had ever gotten less than something like 64-66%, right?
I think that's
except when he ran. And we should say Hastert came in, Congressman Hastert came in '86, and at that time that was a very close race. He won that 52-48.
That's correct.
After that, this district was viewed as pretty much his, a Republican district. Of course, in 2006, that was the year of the tsunami for the Republicans when they were swept out of the majority in the House and the Senate, and also compounding that for Speaker Hastert was the Mark Foley affair, which involved pages and so forth. So you're back now to running in the Democratic primary. John Lesch is. He's got competition. Did you have a competition in the primary last time around?
I did. Ruben Zamora.
Ruben, who had been the candidate the year before,
2004.
and cycle in 2 years before.
Okay.
All right, so you beat Zamora and won that. This time we'll see who you have, but more about John Lesch, who is 33 years old, born in West Africa to Lutheran missionaries from the United States.
Correct.
Left West Africa at the age of 12, to come to a farm in Newark, Illinois. After high school, joined Amoco for a few years, joined the U.S. Navy in 1995, analyzing Middle Eastern intelligence, participated in 1998 in an attack on one of Osama bin Laden's Afghanistan training camps, leadership role in some what you might call small-scale attacks on Saddam Hussein in 96 and 98. Specialty is Iranian political military affairs. Medically evacuated from Bahrain was John Lesch. In 1999, received an honorable discharge, has gone to college to complete his degree at Illinois State University in Bloomington, Illinois. Got that in 2002, degree in history. And that's around the time some people started hearing about the war in Iraq and speaking out against the war in Iraq.
That's correct.
Were you doing that in 2002?
I'd recently got out of the United States Navy, completed college, was embarking on what I thought would be a small business career. And that's correct. When the president started to take the steps to go to war in Iraq, I knew that it would be a mistake, and I started to speak out and eventually joined the Democratic Party.
When was that? Do you remember what part of 2002?
It was the blank check. When Congress signed a blank check and gave...
Fall of 2002,
Correct.
That was the vote in Congress to authorize the president to take military action.
Correct.
In
October
Iraq.
of 2002.
October 2002. And you were speaking out then, you say?
I was. I wrote a letter to the editor. By February, when Colin Powell gave his presentation to the United Nations, I think I was a little bit more active by then and starting to look for a presidential candidate to back.
All right, so so clearly looking back, did you say in the fall of 2002 you would have opposed, if you were in Congress, you would have voted no on that that request to authorize military action?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think
you would have, yeah. You said
it's
that then.
unconstitutional.
So you and Barack Obama, because he said this on Public Affairs in November of 2002, he spoke out in rallies in October of 2002, and you're saying arm in arm, maybe not physically, but intellectually you were right there with Barack Obama?
Right. Well, I think Congress should retain the right to declare war.
And so they could have declared war, but they shouldn't make it contingent and give the president, you're saying, the right to decide later on. Is that your point?
Absolutely. And that goes for a Democratic president or a Republican president.
So your point is they should have waited until March of 2003 if the president wanted to declare war on Iraq, then ask Congress to do so, and then they would take or not take action.
Sure, Congress should have taken a little more responsibility.
Although the
for this.
outcome probably would have been the same, don't you think? Because in March of 2003, don't you think most of the people in the Democratic Party who voted for authorizing the president to take military action in the spring of 2003 would have voted the same way as they did in the fall of 2002?
Yeah, I think it probably would have.
Right, so, okay.
But again,
So
lot
the
of
niceties of constitutional niceties would have been better, but in terms of impact, effect, we would have been in the same position as a country.
perhaps.
Okay.
You never know, though, because a congressman could take, a little more responsibility when they're actually voting for war than to just authorize. Hillary still gets away with her little line about "if I had known."
If she had known, but she doesn't apologize for that vote, right? And that's why some of the left are still upset with Hillary, but she will not come out and say, "I made a mistake. It was the wrong thing to do." Is
Hillary
that
makes
correct?
her own decisions.
Are you supporting Hillary or Barack?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
You're supporting?
No.
You're not
no.
supporting Hillary.
I'm
You're
not a
supporting
Hillary
Barack
fan.
Obama?
I like Obama or Edwards on the
haven't decided,
presidential side.
okay.
I think that Richardson also brings something to the table.
Okay. All right, so rounding it out, we'll get there in a minute. You then decided to run in '06.
Correct.
And when did you start that campaign for the '06 election?
It would have been June of 2005
Okay.
when my brother had recently received orders to go to Iraq. He's in the United States Army, a sergeant in the U.S. Army. And this is something him and I had talked about early on, is that Congress has to do more. And, when he asks, there was no question.
Your brother received orders to go into Iraq at that time in '05?
Correct.
Was he in the reserves?
No, he's active duty.
Active duty, okay. And how did that go?
Well, he's back. He did his one-year tour.
Uh-huh.
He got married. Now he's looking at a second tour.
So he stayed in the Army?
He's still in the Army.
He's still in the Army. Did he re-up after that then?
I don't think he has yet.
So he was in for a longer period?
He's in it for a 6-year or 8-year
thing.
haul. Right.
Oh, I see. What does he think about their war in Iraq?
Well, he's opposed to it.
He's opposed to it, but he's doing his duty as a soldier to go and
He
do
is.
what he's told to do, carry out his orders. Would that be correct?
That's what most soldiers do.
Yeah, that's what they're told to do, right? That's what they say they're I don't know if they take an oath, but basically that's what soldiers do. They don't make policy, they execute policy.
That's correct. As did I when I was in the United States Navy.
Yeah. Okay. But, so you ran once, basically haven't stopped running with the idea that you would run again in '08, is that right?
I think so. I've said that I'm going to be involved in politics, electoral politics, until we get our troops out of Iraq.
And recently married to your current campaign manager, previously Jennifer Downard, now Jennifer Leish, right?
Most exciting day this year was June 21st.
Of 2007, so just
Correct.
barely, we're taping this on the 22nd, you've just celebrated your 1-month anniversary.
Yep.
And you celebrated that how?
By folding envelopes for a campaign mailer.
Quite an exciting evening for Jennifer, I'm sure that she appreciated that.
I have a great wife.
She's with you all the way, she's a trooper, so to
Yep.
speak. Okay. The 14th district for our folks, well, let's come back, we'll talk, tell me just generally, where is the 14th district?
Well, it starts in DuPage County, Wayne and Winfield Township, West Chicago, Bartlett. It goes all the way over to almost the Quad Cities. That includes Kane, Kendall, DeKalb, Lee, and then portions of Whiteside, Henry, and Bureau counties.
All right, and there's some competition on both sides, depending. Former Speaker Hastert has not said whether he's going to run or not. It's announced. It is said he will announce in August. On the Republican side, they're lining up. They say if he decides not to run, State Senator Chris Lawson, who's been on this show, Jim Oberweis, who's been on this show and running in previous races, Mayor Kevin Burns from Geneva, and more recently Mike Stokey, who's the Chief of Staff for Dennis Hastert.
Correct.
And on the Democratic side, in addition to John Lush, we're hearing the names Bill Foster, Jotham Stein, and somewhat State Representative Linda Chapalavia, who's the state rep in that area from Aurora.
Correct.
All right, so we just started talking about the war. Is that the dominant issue as you see it in this congressional race?
Without question, I think it is across this country. Americans want answers and they want solutions.
And they want the troops. Well, what do they? You want the troops out now. That's your position. The troops should be out now. And as we've said, I guess your position was the troops should have never gone there, right?
Correct. I used to write what's called a 110-day plan. Where would the United States military be if we invaded Iran or Iraq? And when I say I wrote it, I didn't author the whole thing completely. But I did participate in it and put some input into that product as an intelligence product.
When you were in the...
When I was in the United States Navy in the Middle East. And, the outcome that we've seen in Iraq is probably worse than we predicted. But that being said, I knew that it would be a mistake. It's a long-term strategic mistake for the United States to almost unilaterally invade a country and then not
Well, there were
plan.
40 countries that went in at the time, right?
If you want to count anyone other than Britain, perhaps. But
Well, so you count Britain, you don't count Australia?
Australia had a few thousand people.
You don't
there,
count Spain?
but, I don't think they're with us anymore.
But they were then, weren't they?
They were.
Italy, right?
Correct.
All right. So, there were some sizable countries, right?
I would say that the United States and Britain led the charge, and a few friends came along.
Okay.
But they never went through the United Nations, and that would have been the necessary step that I think.
You think the United States should never go to war unless the UN approves?
In defense, I think it's fine. We can defend ourselves
But like in Darfur,
unilaterally.
for instance, right now, people are saying there is and about to be further genocide in Darfur. The UN, I think most would say, are dragging their feet, not doing anything. And you think the United States should not do anything because the UN does not approve of the U.S. going in to stop genocide in Darfur?
I think that the United Nations should step up their role, and the United States should step up our role within the UN.
I know, but if the UN doesn't at some point...
To go in, not for war, but for peacekeeping missions.
No, but the UN is not doing anything now, and it hasn't for years. People are not talking about that. And if that persists, or given the current state, would you say this is a situation where the United States, to prevent genocide, should assist the government there to avoid, or assist those who are being slaughtered, I guess would be the way of putting it? Should the U.S. do something in Darfur to prevent that genocide?
I think that
without the UN approval?
Well, I think that I'm just telling you the steps that I think should be taken. And that as a congressman, I would support financial backing to do these, is to go through the United Nations to enact a peacekeeping mission in Darfur.
Okay. Now, going back to Iraq, given where we are now, notwithstanding what you recommended not be done in 2002, now, given where we are now, one, I think you would agree that there's significant presence of al-Qaeda in Iraq now.
Correct.
May not have been in 2002, but they're there certainly now, right?
The last National Intelligence Estimate report signified that Iraq is now a training grounds for al-Qaeda.
Right. And so if we were to remove the troops now precipitously from Iraq, is it possible that Iraq would become a safe haven to be a training camp for al-Qaeda?
Well, I think that you're going to see violence in Iraq. There's going to be a power struggle when the United States leaves and whatever allies are still with us. That's inevitable. That's inevitable whether we stay or whether we leave. The question is, what can we do to help Iraq get on their feet? And I think that right now they perceive the United States as being an invading and occupying force. And that what we need to do is back away and communicate to them that we're there to assist at their will. And I would say...
Who views us as an invading and occupying force now? You said they view us as an invading and occupying force. Who is they?
The Iraqi people. Even the Iraqi government. This is about the only thing that they agree on, is that the United States should leave.
Would you really think that? I mean, you don't think Maliki's just, trying to protect himself politically by saying some of those things? You think Maliki would be happy to see 160,000 troops leave Iraq or 150,000 leave Iraq tomorrow? You really think that?
Yeah, I think that the majority of Iraqis would.
So you don't think they're concerned, and the Sunnis would be happy to see the U.S. out so that the Shia could then move in and slaughter them? Well, do you think the Shia would treat these Sunnis as fairly as they might if the U.S. is present in Iraq?
I don't know that the Sunnis and Shias are treating each other fairly. There's an ongoing proxy war, even between Iran and Saudi Arabia, going on in Iraq.
But you know the Shia have no love for the Sunni, right?
Correct.
And the U.S. to some extent provides some kind of a buffer for that now, I think.
To some extent, maybe.
If you're the Sunni, you'd think you'd like to see the U.S. out of Iraq now too?
Well, that would require the United States to take a side on the Sunnis or Shia side, and that's an ultimate loss for us if we take
Well,
any
no, but I
side.
think it's trying to take a side for stability. I mean, you're familiar with what's happened in Al-Anbar province, right?
Which instance?
Well, in the last year or so, that was a case that people thought that was lost. That was basically lost to Sunnis, to Al-Qaeda and so forth. And apparently the Sunnis turned around and started killing the Al-Qaeda there, joined with the U.S. as a counterinsurgency. Now people are viewing it as one of the better, more safe areas of Iraq.
Okay. Well,
Would that be-
I
would that-
haven't looked at
You haven't looked at
Al-Anbar
that, so you haven't looked
closely
at that.
enough.
Okay.
Right.
So in your view, though, what do? Do you just get out? I mean, how soon do you get those 150,000 troops out of Iraq?
The first step is to communicate to the Iraqi people that we do intend to leave.
Completely, no residual force.
Yeah.
And in your view, you've been in the military, how soon can you do that reasonably?
Logistically, it would take several months, at least.
At
At
least.
least 3 months.
But in 3 months, you can get them all out, and that's it, and we're done.
Well, I would maintain a presence in Kuwait. I think we still need to maintain a regional presence. I think that it has to be closely, we have to work with the United Nations and the United Arab League. Whatever government they come up with, hopefully a government free of oppression, nothing like the Hussein regime, has to have a Made in Iraq label. It can't be something that a Western government imposes upon the Iraqi people. If, at their request, we are asked to come back in, I think that that should be the only way that we participate in
So
military fashion.
if a government from Iraq asked the United States to come back in, you would return and bring back all those troops?
Only working through the United Nations.
Oh, through the United Nations, not if the government does so on its own. All right. Iran, you said you specialized in Iran, right?
Correct.
What should we do there? Iran seems to be marching toward a nuclear capability. Is that something the United States should live with, Iran as a nuclear force?
Well, first, I think you should look at how the politics of fear forwarded by this administration has led to a politics of fear by their president, who I think everybody agrees is somewhat of a radical mindset. The Iranians.
Radical, or were you about to say madman? It did sound like you were about to say madman.
I think he's viewed as a radical by pretty much everybody.
Who is that? What's the president there?
I cannot, let me see. what's his name.
Ahmadinejad?
Yeah.
So you're saying you wouldn't call him a madman, just about a madman?
I think he represents the radical side of their government.
Yeah, but are you saying that because of fear of the United States, they've developed a nuclear capability, and if the United States had not been so fearsome, then they wouldn't be developing this?
No, they've been pursuing a nuclear ability for a long time.
And now it appears they're probably within a year or two of having that capability, right?
That's debatable, and they've also been pursuing, probably of greater concern, a long-range missile threat to hit Israel.
So what do we do?
Right. Well, again, I just want to go back to the cause of this because I think it underscores.
We've only got a half hour on the show, and maybe about 12 minutes left, so
that you've got,
I don't want you to take too much of your time
You've
on
got
this.
a president in the United States that says, we're going after Iran. He puts them in the axis of evil. And then he invades Iraq. It enables someone like Ahmadinejad, I'm always going to screw up his name, to come to power, beating his own war drum, message of fear, strengthening that side, that message that war against the United States is inevitable and that they have to prepare for it.
So what should the U.S. policy be now?
We need to work harder with the international community to stop the flow of scientists going into Iran, propping up their nuclear capability, as well as other parts of their military capability, shutting off support from Russia.
Yeah.
France.
Aren't we working with Russia and France and others? Aren't we doing that, and apparently to no effect in Iran?
I would say we could do better.
Work the diplomacy harder.
Right, absolutely.
All right, let's go over to some domestic issues. Immigration, comprehensive immigration reform just failed. McCain, Kennedy, Gutierrez seem to get rejected, however you want to put it, in the Senate. That seems dead until, at best, 2009. What do you think? Was that the right bill? Would you have supported that comprehensive immigration reform bill?
I don't like it.
You don't like it?
Yeah, it wasn't good enough for me, no. I'm not one of these people that subscribes to the thought that a lot of the immigrants here are living here and working here because American citizens don't want those jobs. At the same time, I recognize that a lot of the people being brought here are being brought by multinational corporations, large, big businesses that benefit from the cheap labor. That to me is the core issue here, is how do we address this cheap labor? And we are going to, as long as, there's a porous border, which is enforced by the executive branch, not the United States Congress. All the Congress does is provide funding for border control.
Right.
There's going to be people living here illegally, working here illegally.
So you're saying there's nothing we can do to really stop the flow across the border from Mexico into the United States of illegal immigrants? Am I reading that right? You're saying there's nothing really to be done?
Until we have an administration that puts
wants to do it.
that wants to do it. Right?
So but is your recommendation that if you're elected in Congress is to do more to stop the flow of illegal immigrants from Mexico into the U.S.? Am I getting that right?
There's three things we have to do. We have to cut down on some of the bureaucracy of legalization. It's a long line.
Make it easier for people to become legal.
Absolutely. Okay. I had a lot of friends in the military, married wives from Australia.
So that's number one.
And it took them 2 years.
Number two?
Yeah. Number two, we have to engage in fair trade. It's the free trade agreements that have sent most of our jobs down to Mexico, the maquiladora
So you're
factories.
opposed to NAFTA, opposed to CAFTA?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
They've plunged Mexico into poverty.
Okay, so fair trade, number two, and number three?
And number three, I think that we do need better border security. The taxpayers are paying for it, they're not getting it.
But fence, would you be in favor of a fence across the border?
I don't think we need a fence. I do think that the people that are down
unmanned
there,
drones that have sensors that look for people who are crossing illegally and then take appropriate action, would that be okay?
I think probably, I don't know about that. I haven't looked into the technology that's available.
All right, so something to...
I would look at it.
Okay.
This is a negotiating point for me. The trade agreement's not a negotiating point. The bureaucracy in citizenship.
What about the 12 million who are here, 12 to 15 million who are here illegally right now? Would you give them an earned path to citizenship?
I would give them an opportunity to take citizenship. If they choose not to learn the English language, become a tax-paying citizen, then yeah, there's no reason. Why are they here? Why are they staying here? But
right.
The border security thing is a national security thing. When we were going down to our wedding, my wife packed all of our wedding stuff in one suitcase, including the cake cutting knife. And we were held up for an hour. Missed our plane. Not a big deal. Security is important on an airplane, but that's over a cake cutting knife.
Right.
And look what is possible coming through the southern border.
Okay. Education. Is that a national issue or is that a state and local issue?
Right now it's a state and local issue.
Yeah, so I mean, as a congressman, do you have strong views on education, or is that something you'd punt and send back to the state and local folks to deal with?
Well, having lived in other countries, I think one of the things that separates America from some of the poor nations is education. And I think that it's wrong to say that Tennessee, that if you grow up in Tennessee, you're going to get a lower quality of education than you are, say, Illinois.
So it'd be like a constitutional right, like Jesse Jackson.
You would have to change.
Congressman Jackson speaks of uniform, high-quality education guaranteed by the Constitution. You'd support that?
You would have to change the United States Constitution. Right now.
She would favor that?
Yeah.
Okay. And short of that, would you favor things like charter schools? Or would you encourage that as a congressman, even though that's a state-mandated type thing?
What kind of?
Charter schools?
Yeah, what kind?
Well, anything that, the current, you know what charter schools are now in Illinois. There's a cap. You can have 30, I think, in Chicago, 15 in the suburbs, and 15 downstate. They generally relax a lot of regulations, and so some would say the bureaucracy is removed, allowing them to innovate and compete and try to provide higher education. I'm
okay with charter schools.
You're okay with charter schools,
and even some private schools.
School vouchers. Would you like to give people some school choice? Give them right now in Chicago we spend $12,000. Give them the $12,000 a voucher and say, if you're happy at your current school, yes. If not, stay there. If not, you can go to the private school of your choice. I pick on Chicago, but you could say East Decatur, anywhere throughout Illinois where you have so-called non-performing schools, or at least a substantial percentage of non-performing schools. Would you like to give people that kind of free choice?
I think
school voucher, school choice?
I think that the answer is to fix the public education system. I don't believe necessarily in big government, but...
So no on vouchers?
No on vouchers.
We got to move along. Let's go over to tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts. Would you support any of those Bush tax cuts?
Not for those making more than $250,000 a year.
So right now you'd repeal the tax cuts. Would that be effectively that you would raise income taxes for those making $250,000, but anybody earning less than $250,000, they could keep their tax cuts?
They could keep their tax cuts, and we could probably find a way to give them more.
All right. Healthcare. You're in favor of a single-payer system extending Medicare?
Correct.
All right. So you extend Medicare, basically the whole system, make the government the single payer, and you think healthcare would be improved in terms of financing?
Correct. We have a great healthcare delivery system and a horrible healthcare financing
Well,
system.
when you make the government the single payer, is that almost the single buyer? Is there a monopsony element? You know about monopsony. Monopoly is bad when you have a single seller. Monopsony is said to be bad when you have a single buyer. Because they have too much power, they might depress prices for drugs, depress prices for care. Would that perhaps dampen innovation in the United States in healthcare?
I'm not too worried about the drug companies not making enough money. I'm worried about the seniors.
You're worried about hospitals not making enough money? You're worried about doctors not making enough money?
They're going to have to, whoever your single payer is going to have to negotiate fair reimbursement rates. Obviously, if a hospital cannot afford to pay their doctors and nurses and keep the doors open, it's no good to that community.
Right.
So the government would have to work to provide fair reimbursement rates and increase those drastically. Right now, a hospital can't survive on Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates.
Let me go back to terrorism. We're just going to flip back and forth on foreign and domestic policy as we wind up here. But global war on terror, John Edwards just says that's a bumper sticker. You agree with Edwards on that?
Is the global war on terror a bumper sticker?
Or is it actually, is it a real thing, a real policy, a real strategy?
I think the Republicans manipulate it to use it to their political advantage.
To that extent you agree with Edwards?
To strengthen their message of fear.
But would you go as far as Edwards and say it's a bumper sticker?
I think that there is a global war on terror.
There is, and legitimately.
But the Republicans are happy to put it on their bumper sticker.
We'll go real fast, more or less of these things. More or less of aggressive interrogations? Aggressive interrogations, should we have more of those or fewer?
Interrogations of who?
Well, in Gitmo and Guantanamo Bay, it said we've had our interrogations have been too aggressive, some people say. Some people say it yields useful intelligence. If you had to go one way or the other, would you say?
Yeah, I've been part of this. I think a higher trained interrogators is probably the route that we need to go. Okay. As far as more aggressive, I don't think that we should violate the Geneva Convention.
All right, on that note, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, John Lesh, who is running for Congress in the 14th Congressional District. Thanks so much for coming, John. Yeah. We hope you'll come back, and the primary is February 5th. I guess that's now been set to year 2008, so plenty of time before that, and then the general election. You're hoping you win in the Democratic primary, and then you'll have a shot against whoever the Republican is, whether it's former Speaker Hastert or somebody else.
We'll wait and see.
You're ready to take them all on. Warrantless wiretaps, should we have more of those or fewer of those?
Oppose it.
You oppose them, okay. Go through get a judicial warrant.
Yeah, there's a legal process, follow it.
Data mining of U.S. calls, these are calls simply from U.S. to U.S. The others we're talking about were U.S. out to foreigners that might be viewed to be Al-Qaeda related. But data mining, not listening in, but looking at patterns, is that appropriate for the U.S. government?
I oppose it on the most part.
You oppose the Patriot Act?
Most of it, absolutely.
Were there any aspects of the Patriot Act that you think were useful and should have been adopted?
I think that the United States intelligence entities engage in a lot of the things already in the Patriot Act. It's just that now the Patriot Act makes it legal in a court of law.
Okay. Free trade, you said you're against, you're for fair trade, not for free trade. So you were against NAFTA, you think that was harmful to the United States? You think CAFTA was harmful? The minimum wage was just raised recently. You supported that. Would you make it even higher?
I would make it higher if we had a small business tax cut.
What would you raise the minimum wage to?
Well, I think it needs to be a living wage.
Which would be what?
You're looking at $12, $13 an hour.